History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
Hello, you spectacular people. Welcome to this 483rd episode of the History Goes Bump podcast. Ghost Tours for the Theater of the Mind. I am your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly from California.
Yay! You're going to be coming home for a little bit here pretty soon. So that'll be nice.
Yes, I am. I'm looking forward to it. And with today being the 15th, we're going to be celebrating my dad's 88th birthday today.
Happy birthday, Dad.
Yeah, happy birthday.
And the reason you're coming home is because he's doing pretty good there in the rehab facility. So you're going to come back for a couple of weeks and then you'll head back out there. My dad did great during his surgery. He gave birth to a 10-pound tumor.
Oh my gosh. Go big or go home.
Yeah. And hopefully today he will be coming home from the hospital.
Yes.
So that'll be nice. And we thank everybody for, again, your continued prayers and support that you've been giving us. On this episode, we're going to be doing a town that has a really cool name, Kelly, Occoquan. I love saying that.
It's definitely a mouthful.
It's in Virginia, and it was suggested by our listener, Cecil H. Before we get into that, we have one person to welcome into the spectacular crew, and that's William.
Thank you for joining our Facebook group.
And now, this moment in Oddity.
Well, Diane, I don't know about our listeners, but I know you love a good cheesecake, as do I.
Oh, yes.
And although we eat pretty healthy in general, this is a whole new culinary delight that we may want to partake in. Now, it may look a little strange, but hey, we're all about the strange and weird here at History Goes Bump, right? Well, a group of mechanical engineers at Columbia University have been able to 3D print an edible cheesecake. Can you imagine being able to create such a gratifying dessert such as this at home? Because that 3D printing ability is coming soon. The slice in question, and I use that descriptive word intentionally, was a cheesecake slice consisting of banana puree, strawberry jam, cherry drizzle, peanut butter, graham cracker, and frosting. So, of course, the graham cracker was serving as the crust. Then pool-like layers of peanut butter secure the softer ingredients like banana puree or jam in place. The structures within the architectural space of the cake support each other, not unlike an architectural support of any tall corporate building. The time it takes one of the foodie 3D printers to create this delectable dish is approximately 30 minutes from start to finish for a single slice. The taste? Well, it was likened to Willy Wonka's 3-course dinner chewing gum from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Different flavors of the cheesecake would hit the palate at different times. The 3D food printing industry has proposed the needed development of creating food cartridges for the printers. All I know is we like natural and fresh food, so we will not be experimenting with such a device. But one thing is for sure, a 3D printer that can create edible meals certainly is odd.
Turn out the lights. The party's just getting started.
And now, this month in history.
In the month of April, on the 6th, in 1483, artist Raffaello Santi was born in Duchy Urbino, Italy. Raphael was well known for his numerous Madonna paintings. His father, Giovanni Santi, was a court painter and is believed to have begun Raffaello's training before his death when Raffaello was only 11 years old. He was a painter and architect of the High Renaissance. Raffaello was also one of the traditional trinity of masters, which included Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. His work was admired for his clarity of form, ease of composition, and visual achievement of the Neoplatonic ideal of human grandeur. After additional training in Perugino, Raffaello attained the title of master by 1500. In 1508, he moved to Rome at the invite of the Pope to begin work on the Vatican Palace. While in Rome, Raffaello was given a variety of important commissions, and then he began to work as an architect. He was still a highly sought-after artist at the time of his death on his birthday, April 6, 1520. Wow, so he was born and died on the same day.
Yep. The town of Occoquan in Virginia is a suburb of Washington, D.C., and was established over 250 years ago. This is a town full of historic and colorful buildings that started as a trading post. The mill town has today become an artist enclave that hosts 2 large annual arts and crafts festivals and a few ghosts. Join us as we explore the history and hauntings of Occoquan.
Prince William County in Virginia has its share of haunted locations. This encompassed a large tract of northern Virginia and was named for the son of King George II. The county would have 2 large town areas, Manassas and Occoquan. We're focusing on Occoquan on this episode. Dumfries is part of this county as well, Kelly. And you remember that's where the Weems Botts house is located that we covered on episode 441.
Yeah, that was so cool to have that happy accident. We got off for gas and a potty break, and all of a sudden we realized where we were at and went over to check it out.
Yeah, we looked up and we're like, this is a sign for Dumfries. And I went, wait a minute, didn't we just do an episode on a house here? So
yeah, that was crazy.
Unfortunately, it wasn't open, so we couldn't tour it, but we looked all around the outside of it.
Yes, we did.
So the name Occoquan means at the end of the water and comes from the Algonquin Dogue Indians, who were early inhabitants here. They were eventually replaced by the Dogu tribe. Their main village was at the mouth of the Occoquan River. The first Europeans explored the area in the early 1600s, but wouldn't establish a trading post here until the early 1700s, with a tobacco warehouse being set up on the south bank of the river. The town soon expanded from there with iron furnaces built by Charles Ewell and John Ballandine in 1755. A grist mill in 1757, a merchant's mill with a second grist mill was built in 1759, and the first cotton mill in Virginia would eventually be here in 1828. The town thrived as a port until river silting shut down the river traffic. Occoquan was chartered as a town in 1804. The mills eventually closed and industrial operations shut down. The town reinvigorated with small businesses and is today a tourist center with lots of great shops and restaurants, and several of these places are reputedly haunted.
The Occoquan Historic District consists of 60 structures. Many of these are frame, 2-story structures that had once been private homes. They have German siding and decorative porches. They're all very cute. Mill Street was clearly the main hub of this town and still is today with lots of shops. An arson fire destroyed many buildings in 1980, but everything was rebuilt and restored. During some excavations along the Occoquan River, a tombstone was unearthed dating back to 1893. This was a spot behind Madigan's waterfront restaurant. The tombstone is on display at the Mill Street Museum and is said to be unnaturally cold to the touch. The corner of Commerce and Union Streets was the scene of a Civil War skirmish, and people still claim to hear the moaning there.
Yeah, I was watching videos of people driving through the town, doing like little side trips or shopping excursions. And Kelly, this is such a neat little place. There were some areas that kind of reminded me, on the hillside in San Francisco where you see the row houses that all kind of look exactly the same and are all painted real brightly and look real cute. That's kind of like what these look like, except for that there are these shops and they all have these really cute colors and kind of the same styling to them.
Nice.
So we just mentioned Madigan's Waterfront Restaurant there. This is located at 201 Mill Street. It's family owned and operated. They started it in 2005. Occoquan Spirits, which is the tour group that's here in town. So if you want to do a ghost tour, they're the ones you're going to look up. They've conducted dowsing sessions inside Madigan's, and they believe they were talking to two little girls that like to hang out on the second floor of the restaurant. They have no idea why they're there, where they've come from. They also have had sensory experiences there that included one woman feeling a hand on her leg. That's not okay if you can't see the person. And another was bumped into by something she couldn't see when they were going up the stairs.
Nice. Just another place that we need to go experience for ourselves.
Yeah, I would just love to take pictures. You know me, I love the architecture, so it looks really cool just for that.
Absolutely. So this shop has an interesting name. It's Your Day Shop. It's located at 206 Mill Street. The website describes this as a self-photo studio and a party room rental. This is a wood frame 2-story building with a gabled roof that was built in the late 18th century. At least 7 families have lived in the house before it was renovated in the 1970s to serve as a retail shop. The original porch was replaced with Williamsburg-type steps. The renovations also revealed the original material used to build the house, which included huge timbers, brick ballast, and oyster shell mortar. And the wall was left open so people could see this material. The spirit here is named Charlotte, and she likes to rearrange things. People have seen her apparition and felt cold spots. There's also a feeling of being watched by someone who isn't there.
Yeah, that's one thing that's really going to be missing in us sharing about these hauntings here is where these spirits are coming from.
Right.
I don't have a lot of names of like families that lived in places. We just have this is very basic. There had been 7 families that had lived here before they opened it as a shop. So I'm going to assume that Charlotte was probably one of the children who had lived in this house at some point. And then there's some of these locations that I don't know what the name of the store is, or it's changed hands and it may not have reopened as something. So this one we're just calling 302 Mill Street because that's where it's at. The original part of this building was built in 1860 and was added onto throughout the years. This started as W.R. Selectman Dry Goods, Groceries, Liquors, and General Merchandise. They covered everything in that name.
That's a mouthful, too.
Later, it became Leary Lumber and Hardware for many years. And in 1971, it became Blackbeard's Restaurant, serving up seafood. How perfect. Wonder if they served it up on the Queen Anne.
Could be.
The building was gutted by a fire in the mid-1980s and reopened as a quilt shop. Then it was the Golden Goose, which was a shop specializing in Christmas decor and novelties. I don't know why they called it the Golden Goose. I would think you'd call it something like Golden Christmas or something like that. But
I'm wondering if they have multiples of those because I swear I've seen them before.
Oh, well, maybe it was
Sorry.
a chain store or something. The most recent iteration was the Urban Posh Boutique, but that seems to have moved to a location on Washington Street when I was doing some research. So that's why I'm just not sure what's there right now. If any of you have been to Occoquan in the past couple of months and you have that information, we'd love to know. When it was the Golden Goose, staff claimed that the place had a poltergeist who enjoyed moving stuff around and liked to hang out at the old sales counter after hours. The original 1860 tin ceiling has managed to survive through all the years. So despite having a fire, it still has that tin ceiling, which I would love to see.
Yeah, me too. I love those.
You're going to love the name of this place, Kelly. Artist Undertaking Gallery.
Ooh, I like that a lot. So this is located at 309 Mill Street and was established in 1977. The name may sound unusual until you learn that this had once been a funeral home.
Yeah, because at first I saw the name and I'm like, Artist Undertaking. Like, are they talking about them undertaking a project?
No, I immediately went to funeral home in my head. It was built in the 1930s by R.S. Hall. This funeral home went out of business in 1972 after Hurricane Agnes blew through and took out the additions to the building. The main building survived, but was flooded by the Occoquan River. When the artists decided to make this building their studio, they had to clean mud out of the basement left over from the flooding.
Oh, I bet that was fun.
Yeah. The old funeral director haunts the store. He was seen by his grandson in the place after he died. Annette Kalepua worked there, and one night she was alone in the building and someone walked past her out of the corner of her eye. She saw the figure pass again. The third time the figure passed her, she said, "Okay, you can have the store. I'm going home."
Yeah, I think I'd be like, actually, no, I wouldn't be like, I'm going. I'd be like,
No.
Where's some equipment? I'm going to start recording.
Where's my camera? One day, after a snowy day had shut everything down, Annette came into the store and opened the cash register. She was shocked to see all the coins neatly stacked up on top of each other. She closed the drawer and opened it again, and the coins were still stacked, so she called a couple of other employees over, and they were shocked to see them that way too. Annette took pictures, but the pictures came out black. Bummer.
Yeah, that is a bummer. One thing is like, well, maybe somebody had loaded up the cash register with the coins and they were still, from coming out of the rolls, still stacked a little bit on top of each other. But when you close the register, it kind of should have knocked them around a little bit.
Yeah, back in the day when I had those kinds of jobs, absolutely. You have to close it pretty rough, typically.
Yeah, and I never remember pushing the coins out of the rolls and having them just stay stacked. They just always went all over the place, which I think is why it shocked her to open it up and be like, did somebody come in here and just like, and why would you organize them in stacks in the cash register? Because you're just going to bang them around when you're giving people change. So before Hall built his undertaking business, there was Slack Funeral Home. It had been located at 210 to 214 Commerce Street, but no longer stands. Undertaker Slack had a 2-horse carriage with black windows on both sides, and it was open from the back. Carl Ike Jr., born in Occoquan, Woodbridge area, was quoted in 1979 describing his memories of Undertaker Slack. He had 2 old bony horses and a rickety old hearse, but I guess it made no difference to the dead person.
Oh my.
So I thought that'd be a cool little side story to throw in under this funeral home here. So there had to have been at least 2 of them there.
And next we have 13 Magical Moons. This is located at 440 Mill Street and had 3 resident cats that would often appear to see something that nobody else could see. An employee named Amanda said that the cats often seemed to be looking at something behind her. And she said that she would often get that feeling like something was behind her. She was there alone one evening close to closing time when she heard a banging in the other room. She ignored it, but later when she went into the back, something started rattling the doorknob back there. And then she saw what she described as a shadow that crossed the room very quickly. So then she left pretty quickly because it scared her.
Next, we have the Gift and Gather Shop. This is located at 307 Mill Street and opened in 2017. As people could see, most of these shops are on Mill Street for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
This is a place that showcases small independent creators and sells pure palette soy candles. The building was built in the early 1900s and served as a general store from the 1940s until 1972, where fishing licenses and tackle were available, as well as boat rentals. The rear had an attachment that featured 5 rooms for rent, but this washed away during Hurricane Agnes in 1972. People have reported seeing a flickering light in the windows in the early morning hours, and sometimes they even see a woman holding a candle moving through the shop when it's closed.
Just don't catch the place on fire.
Yeah, no kidding. Don't drop that thing. And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors.
And now we have the La Bella Bridal Boutique, which is located at 313 Mill Street. The building dates back to 1888 and was formed from ground oyster shell mortar and English bricks that came over from ships as ballast.
Yeah, so it wasn't even meant to be used as a building material, but hey, whatever works.
Lynn's general store used to be here on the ground floor, and Lynn and his family lived on the upper level. The unexplained activity here are dark footprints appearing inside the building and disembodied whispering voices. Merchandise gets moved about in the middle of the night.
There's a lot of these spirits that like to move stuff around in the stores. That's like the main thing almost every place has, is that stuff gets moved around. So they just don't like the way things are arranged. And part of me wonders if you have families who had lived here before and now you've got this shop full of stuff everywhere that they're like, why is this in my living room? Or,
Right.
if they're trying to move stuff out of their way. Next, we have a great spot on Mill Street called the Spot on Mill Street. This is located at 406 Mill Street. It's actually the oldest building in Occoquan and is believed to have been built in 1750. Massive logs were uncovered in a 1970 renovation that had been hand-dressed for what was originally a residence. The stones for the foundation are the same type used for the Rockledge property, which we'll be talking about in just a little bit here. The fireplace here is original and the stairway is built from chestnut. Legend claims that British spies were kept in the basement dungeon during the Revolutionary War. Today, this is a pub on the Occoquan pub crawl. So I'm assuming that it has some haunts going on here, maybe something to do with those British spies. I couldn't find any information on what specifically is haunting this place, but since the pub crawl goes there for the ghost tour, I'm assuming it's got some ghosts.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And now we're on to the building at 204 Washington Street, which was originally a corner grocery store. This is a 2-story wood frame house with a 1-story porch and was built at the turn of the century. Ogle Harris, who was the son of a slave, opened the store in 1914 as an ice cream business that expanded into a grocery store. The store would sell as much as 25 gallons of hand-cranked ice cream on a weekend. That's where you'd be hanging out.
Oh, totally. I'd be right there.
The store sold bushels of fresh vegetables from local farms, and Harris cut the sides of beef and lamb he sold himself. Harris ran it for 35 years until he passed away in 1949. Then his sons took over and ran it until 1974. A business named Yarn Cloud was here for 10 years, but has relocated. There are thought to be several ghosts in the shop. They move things, create disembodied footsteps, and have revealed themselves as full-bodied apparitions.
Yeah, so this is another one of those places. If you guys know what is now at 204 Washington Street, let us know.
Yeah, because there's no name for it.
And the sad thing about that hand-cranked ice cream is he got so busy with all the other stuff he was doing there, Kelly, that he eventually just started shipping in ice cream and not doing the hand cranking anymore himself.
Oh,
so I was like, no, that's the good stuff.
Yep.
But apparently people didn't mind because they still kept going there and buying the ice cream. The well in the courtyard had been located at 201 Union Street. This location is also home to Poplar Alley. The alley was named for a stand of poplar trees that were once growing here. They were destroyed in a fire in 1916. Alleys like this were to provide access to the rear of buildings. So there are several of these in the city that you'll see like right next to one of the shops that has this alley. The well was here for everyone's use and is said to be haunted by a ghost that likes it quiet. And the reason people figured this out is because any major sources of noise get silenced. There have been some storage units here for an electric company, and they were renovated into shops. So I think that that's kind of what's near where this well had once been. There's I'm assuming a historical plaque or something there to let people know this used to have a well here that everybody'd come to for water.
Right.
I don't know if this particular spirit fell in, and so he's stuck here. And so anytime somebody comes by blaring their radio or whatever, he shuts that radio right down.
Goodness. And now we're moving on to the Occoquan Inn, which is located at 301 Mill Street. The inn is today DeRocco's Italian Restaurant and the tap room. The house was built by Lucian Clark, and then a Tyson Janney moved into it with his new bride in the last quarter of the 1800s. The Janneys were a prominent Quaker family in the town, and they eventually took over the mill complex and the Rockledge Mansion, and they continued to operate the mill into the 1920s. The house passed to a Samuel Davis, then to Robert Hall, and then to the Dawson family in the 1970s. At that time, it was vacant. The Lynn family leased the property and established the Occoquan Inn in the 1970s. They opened a little bar in the basement called the Wade Hampton Lounge. Jim Novak was 23 when he took over the inn in the 1980s. He renamed the little bar the Down Under Tavern.
I think that's kind of cute because it was down in the basement, the Down Under Tavern.
Yeah, very cute. During Novak's tenure, the Occoquan Inn was run as a romantic white tablecloth restaurant. There was a banquet room upstairs. Gary Savage took over in 1997 and ran it until 2020. Then Jim Novak came back and opened DeRocco's Italian Joint. He changed the bar downstairs into the tap room.
All right. So here is the legend that goes with this place. I could find no proof that this is actually true, but there's been enough paranormal investigators in here that have gotten evidence to support this that they think this is probably something that might have happened here. In the 1800s, a Native American lost his life at the foot of the stairway because he seemed to have been embroiled in a love triangle. Apparently, he was sleeping with the innkeeper's wife.
Oh, my.
So the innkeeper shot him with a shotgun. And Kelly, you know how we always say it's always the ladies' rooms that are haunted.
Yes, indeed.
The ladies' room on the second floor here is the most haunted area. They have stuff that happens in other places, but this is definitely the hot spot. A server came up one time and tried to go in the bathroom, and the door wouldn't budge. When she stepped away, the door flew open. There's a large old mirror in the bathroom that is original to the building, and the manager said people sometimes claimed that they would see a spirit in the mirror. This is generally a tall, handsome Native American male with long black hair. There's a fireplace in the tea room, and the spirit sometimes appears in the fireplace.
Yikes.
The only other time I've heard anything like this is in New Orleans at Lafitte's Bar. They'll sometimes see the head of him in the fireplace there.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that story.
There was a large wedding at the inn, and the manager was closing everything down around midnight, and he went back downstairs, and every single place setting had been reversed. He initially thought that a busboy was playing a trick, so the next day he asked the busboy if he'd moved the place settings, and the busboy said he didn't do it.
Ha, that's funny. Occoquan Spirits was told by Jim from DeRocco's that after their tour group left one night, an antique clock fell off the wall in the bar and broke, documenting the time the group left.
And they just left it that way, broken with that
Interesting.
time like that.
Argos Paranormal investigated the inn, and they used a phasma box to communicate, as well as set up 2 flashlights. The one flashlight turned on and then off. They asked if it was a woman they were speaking with, and the flashlight turned on again. Then the phasma box said, "Hey," and one of the investigators said, "You're moving around, aren't you?" And the phasma box replied, "Please look here," and "Investigation."
I thought that was pretty bizarre to have those words come through. And when I was listening, I was watching the video and listening, and I mean, they were very clear words coming through too.
That's cool. The group asked if the spirits remembered them, and the phasma box said, "You." Then they got Scarlet and "Bring her."
So I don't know if there was a Scarlet that had been in the house at some point and they wanted her spirit to be brought there. I don't know.
Perhaps. One of the guys is sensitive, and he got to feeling like there was a child there. And when they asked if a child was there, the word "mine" came through. They are claiming something. So that is probably the second most haunted place here in Occoquan. The most haunted is said to be Rockledge Mansion, and that's what we're going to end with here. And it's the historic anchor of the town and was built by the founder of Occoquan, John Ballantyne, in 1758. Ballantyne also built a sawmill, a gristmill, bakehouses, an iron foundry, and other businesses. I mean, he was busy here. Sounds like it.
Unfortunately, he was really bad with money, and maybe it was because he was spending it all on building all this stuff because he lost everything to foreclosure in 1765. Didn't take him long. That was, 7 years? So he was a great visionary, but not so good about paying his debts. And some of his visionary work was with George Washington, and Ballantyne helped expand Virginia's economy. They were building all kinds of canals and bridges, and so he was helping George Washington with that while they were setting up a lot of the government stuff and everything here. Nathaniel Ellicott was the next owner of the 11-room Rockledge, and he added a kitchen. His family had founded Ellicott City in Maryland. When I saw that last name, I'm like, oh, I wonder if that has anything to do with Ellicott City. Sure enough, their family founded it. That's why it's named after him. Wood siding was very popular in the late 1700s, and so Ellicott put that over the stone that Rockledge had been built from. Can you imagine covering stone over with siding?
No.
I was like, It didn't last for long. Sometime in the 1800s, I don't know if it just started coming off or something destroyed it or whatever, but now it's back to its original stone. Ellicott was also a founder of Occoquan. He laid out streets and built a bridge over the Occoquan River that helped bring a stagecoach line to the town and Although that bridge, of course, doesn't stand to this day, there's a footbridge where the original had been. So you can still walk across a bridge that's where this bridge had been at one time. Ellicott left in 1816, and then, as mentioned before, the Janney family bought Rockledge, and they owned it through 1929. So they owned it for a really long time.
During the Civil War, Rockledge was turned into a hospital, and they drilled holes in the floor to help drain the blood off the floor.
I've never heard that before, but sure enough, you go in there and you look at the floor and you can see now they've been plugged with wood plugs.
Goodness gracious.
There's lots of them. So it's like, I mean, I don't know what else you would have drilled holes in a floor for. So I think that's got to be true.
Yeah, it makes sense. The house suffered damage after the Consolidated Stone Quarry started blasting in 1902 and sent rocks flying at the house and damaged the foundation. As business in town went down, so did Rockledge. Fred Almond Barnes bought Rockledge in 1929 and he renovated it, leaving it to his son, Lawrence Barnes. He and his wife eventually abandoned it in 1960 and it sat vacant for 10 years. A man named Donald Sonner bought it and spent over $1 million renovating it for his wife as a Christmas present.
Some Christmas present. You're falling short here, Kelly.
Yeah, jeez. Sorry, gotta up my standards. But that dream would die when the house was burglarized and set on fire.
Oh, how heartbreaking.
Yeah. Rockledge was severely damaged. Unable to afford to repair it, the Sonners sold it to Joy and Ronald Houghton, who opened it as a bed and breakfast. Their son, Lance Houghton, was the most recent owner, and he was leasing the ballroom to a catering company. It is now for sale for $1.5 million.
Gloria Rouse was the owner of Georgetown Caterers. So these are the ones who have leased it. And she shared with Hilltop Productions some of the experiences she and her staff have had. The day she signed the lease, they were offered a room to overnight in. And in the middle of the night, about 11 o'clock, they heard footsteps on the stairs. And she assumed it was the owner returning to the property. The next morning, she said to him, "We heard you all come in last night." And the owner said, "We didn't come in." This unnerved her, particularly since she was planning on staying a second night. She said nothing happened that second night, thankfully for her. The bartender is set up in the summer kitchen, and they had a candelabra on the bar, and the flames started going around in a circle, all of them doing the same circle. So, I mean, that's a little weird to have flames all doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre.
So Gloria was called over, and she couldn't believe what she was seeing. And she said the reason why is because initially you're going to think, okay, well, there's like air conditioning or heating or something, some kind of forced air in that room. No, there's no forced air in the summer kitchen. So there was like nothing that could cause some kind of a draft. And I mean, you're talking about going around in a circle. So it's got to be some kind of circular air thing going around it.
Right, like a vortex.
So they couldn't understand what was making the flames do that. Here's a really crazy thing. There were investigators there that had a camera on a room, and they caught what looked like a bunch of orbs moving sideways through the shot. Now, they didn't actually have the video for this, but they did like a reanimation of it. And I mean, it looked like there was what looked like snow going through this picture, because Gloria watched it and said it looked like snow coming sideways through this picture. So she left the room. Once she left the room and they went back and looked at the video later, they saw that this snow-like stuff changed direction. So instead of going from side to side, it started coming up from the floor.
Oh my gosh, that's so bizarre.
And this is the floor that has the drill holes in it from where all the blood went through.
Oh.
So this is the hospital area. So I don't know what the hell that was, because it's one of the craziest stories I've heard.
It's like spirits coming up from where the blood drained.
When you have a couple of orbs, okay, but this is like a lot of what she said. I mean, it was a bunch of orbs. Gloria never felt frightened when she was working here. I don't think that Georgetown Caterers is there anymore. I actually think the Rockledge Mansion might be closed. So she had said she never felt frightened when she was in the building herself, even though they would have these experiences. There have also been people who've reported seeing the spirit of a Confederate soldier in here. So he's probably one of them who lost his life in the hospital, I'm sure.
The town of Occoquan is more than fun and colorful shops to peruse. It clearly has a haunting air about it. Is Occoquan haunted?
That is for you to decide.
Well, Kelly, this sounds like a really cool little town to do a little bit of shopping. And as I said earlier, they have the Occoquanspirits.com is where you can get one of the ghost tours that they host there.
Yeah, it sounds like a really neat location.
We'd love to have you guys check out our website at historygoesbump.com. And if you'd like to send us some feedback, you can do that at historygoesbump@gmail.com. We heard from Jamie on the Heathman Hotel that we just dropped last week. She said, a friend of mine used to work there and witnessed quite a few unexplainable occurrences during his tenure. He also allowed me to spend some time in one of the rooms of that hotel overnight to do a little investigating. Another friend and I ran a recorder and definitely captured EVPs that were responses to questions.
Very cool.
So there's a little bit to back up the fact there's something going on at the Heathman. Whitney had written in our Spooktacular crew, here's my ghost story. My partner and I stayed at Chena Hot Springs Resort close to Fairbanks, Alaska. There's a natural hot spring that brings people from all over to dip in the natural hot springs, even when it's 40 below. Well, you'd want to be in a hot spring if it was 40 below.
Yeah.
There's an interesting energy to the place. The room we stayed in was a special honeymoon suite and had a TV, but only got one channel that came in clearly. The entire stay, the only show that came on this one channel was a marathon run of Ghost Adventures, LOL. Okay, fine. But the weird part was when they started probing for ghosts on the show, the lights and fan in the room would turn on and off by themselves. It wasn't a flicker or rhythmic on and off. Rather, it was long and random happenings, and I couldn't shake the feeling of the weird energy of the entire area. I've heard people say sometimes when they're watching Ghost Adventures that they will sometimes have paranormal activity happen in their house, almost like it's inspired by the TV or something.
Really?
What I would like to know is if it's because, I mean, you're seeing something that's taped, so it's not actually happening live.
Right.
So it's just weird that, you know, if it was live, I could kind of see maybe something coming through.
Maybe they just don't like Zach, so the spirits are getting feisty.
That could be. Monica also wrote in the crew, since someone else told their ghost story, I thought I'd tell mine too. I used to live in a house with my husband. It was a 2-story bungalow from the 1920s. The stairs had a landing. My husband worked downstairs, and that was also where the laundry room and garage were. Well, every time I walked up the stairs, I got a strange feeling on the landing, like someone was chasing me. Sometimes it was so intense that I'd have to run up the stairs and out the front door to get away from it. That's pretty intense.
Wow.
My husband, a non-paranormal believer, thought I was being silly and laughed it off. When we moved to a new house, he said, okay, now I can tell you. When I asked what he meant, he said that one of the neighbors had recently told him that an old woman who'd lived there previously had fallen down the stairs and died on the landing.
Oh, my goodness.
She'd been alive probably for days, stuck there until she finally died. Wow, that's really a horrible way to go. I can't imagine.
So sad.
But it makes sense for why she would be haunting that particular location. That would be a horrible way to go.
Yep.
Monica continued, the poor woman was probably trying to get me to help her. I've always sensed energies, and I definitely felt a very strong presence right in that spot. I wish I could go back and tell her to move on. The weird part is that my husband still doesn't believe.
What?
How can he not? She's sitting there telling him that she's getting this weird feeling from the landing, has no idea about the story behind it. He hears the story behind it, so he knows there's something to her feeling and still doesn't believe it.
That's crazy.
Well, at least she didn't push him down the stairs because he wouldn't believe her.
True.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This episode is brought to you by our executive producers.
Be sociable. Drop the chain rattling, neck biting, and shape shifting. And join us on Facebook and Twitter at History Goes Bump. Like the page and follow us.
he laid out streets and built a bridge over the Occoquan quiver. You might quiver when you go over this bridge. My partner and I stayed at Chena Hot Springs Resort close to Fairbanks, Australia. Australia? Really? Fairbanks, Australia, not Alaska.